magnificent morning. Awesome afternoon. An excellent evening for all of us around the world. This is
Yeah, why not?
This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And you've got a friend in me. Oh, Jeanne, I may need you to do those things. We are here to talk about being your own best friend. And I had someone singing "You Have a Friend in Me" a few moments ago, and he can sing, but I don't think everyone wants to hear it. So what I'm going to do is get the YouTube link and ask Jeanne to take over so I can.
I have to say this. We now know why on Patreon you are called Giggle Lady. And that your YouTube channel is Giggle University. Giggle Fest University. So, and thank you, because I'm in the morning time. It's 8:30 in the morning for me here, and having that kind of a fulsome laugh really helps set my day. We're here today with Neville Gaunt and Kamran Rizvi. We're here to talk about being your own best friend with Carla. Before I jump in, I'm going to remind everybody we are running live on YouTube. If you are seeing us, please share it out. Please subscribe, and please put your comments in on the YouTube channel. And we will be sharing the streaming link on our other social media pages. But the more you can share it out for us, the more the algorithms on Yahoo, or not Yahoo, YouTube. See what you've done? You got to me, Carla. So that you can share out the links on YouTube. That helps us with the algorithm, which helps us reach more people. And when you see us on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, share that out as well. So with that, I would like to read the quotes that I found for today. We had some great quotes and some great conversation on Tuesday. If you did not see it, you might want to watch that. But today, getting ready to be your own best friend, I got a quote from Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and a Stoic philosopher. And he writes, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly, and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature. I thought that was pretty good, and that's from way back in the dark ages. So it's played well over time. Now I follow that up with the great American philosopher, the actress Betty White. You know, we just lost her this year, just before she turned 100, but she had a great philosophy. And she writes, it's your outlook on life that counts. If you take yourself lightly and don't take yourself too seriously, pretty soon you can find the humor in our everyday lives. And sometimes it can be a lifesaver. And I love that, because that, basically it says step out of whatever the issue is. Take it lightly, look for the humor in it, which is great to use today, because boy, that was a great laugh. And then finally, I ran across this on my Facebook feed, actually, so I want to share it. It's an Apache prayer from the American Indian tribe Apaches. And it says, looking behind, I am filled with gratitude. Looking forward, I am filled with vision. Looking upward, I am filled with strength. And looking within, I discover peace. And I love that as something you can say, repeat several times within your day. That will help, like I said, help us step out of whatever the issue is, whatever the difficulty is, and be our own best friend. Give ourselves the time we need. And of course, I shared this with you guys last week, so I have to repeat it. And it's from John Assaraf. It says, be careful about what you say to yourself, because someone very important is listening to you. So I got both guys nodding, Carla, so they have to raise their hand for me to pick, because otherwise, which one wants to go first?
Start with Neville, because Neville is so funny today.
Okay, so we'll go with Neville. Well, he's pointing at Cameron, but let's go with Neville.
He doesn't get it.
I was deferring to my elder. Oops. But there you go. Okay, it's a mad day. It's a mad day. Yeah, as far as the song goes, you've got a friend in me. Absolutely. What a friend's for. I just want to add one quote, which has always made me smile more than anything else, because we all talk about teams and teamwork and what it means. And, the best teams in the world are formed on business, and then they create a friendship. And good old Henry Ford, I'm going to come a few hundred years later than you were, Jeanne, with one of yours, Marcus Aurelius. And I'm going to jump into Henry Ford, because he seems to have said an awful lot in his time, and yet not particularly known as a philosopher or a psychologist, more of literally bringing us the Ford car. And he said, my best friend is the one who brings out the best in me. And that could be you. And we forget that, I think, because as you said with your last one, you never know who's listening, or someone important is, no matter where you are. And I enjoy my time in the car these days, because when we're allowed out from COVID, I might have the radio blaring away and I might be singing a song, but I'm also thinking about something else, which dispels the myth that men can't actually do two things at once. We can multitask because we've got a brain that allows it.
Are you talking about walking and chewing gum?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's not difficult, is it? But good old Henry Ford. I mean, just throw it out there. What do you think of the non-philosopher Cameron, Henry Ford? Because he's said so many things in the past. I think this one's pretty good. My best friend is the one who brings out the best in me. Oh, don't know who said that. Sounded like me. Cameron, you need to unmute yourself. Oops. Yeah, you're a novice at this, Cameron. You need to get with it. There's a little button there that says unmute. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm young and I'm learning. So that's just to get back at you, Neville.
My pleasure. Touche.
10 years ago, I hailed a cab in Karachi, sat in it, and the first question after greeting each other, I asked the gentleman driving, how many friends do you have? Out of the blue. And the cab driver, his name was Mubashir, and he said, well, why are you asking me that question today, now? I said, what's so important about today? So he says, it's strange that you're asking me a question about how many friends I have. And today is the day I realized that the only friend I had is also not a friend. So he was in a very tragic situation.
Oh, dear.
And I made it my mission that by the time we arrive at our destination, which was 20 minutes away, that I must think about the situation he's in and make him feel good about himself, or if nothing, for him to take a deep dive and ask himself, why is it happening? So as we arrived at our destination, I had a brainwave, a light bulb moment. And as I was making my payment, I asked him a question. to how many are you a friend? And I noticed his eyes lit up in a question mark. And to me, that was service. And I walked away. So in a sense, it's an attitude. A friend is an attitude. And all of us need to consider that. Instead of counting them on our fingers, we need to adopt the attitude of friendship. And it's a huge word, and we'll discuss it as we go along.
It's true. It's that idea of you get what you put in, whatever investment you put into the relationship comes back, 9, 10, 12 fold. And it's a give and take. Yeah. So if you've got a best friend, I used to have a quote from way back about, there are people and love. There are friends who will do great things with you, but your best friend knows you're going to cause trouble and grabs your arm and says, "This is going to be fun." So basically, your best friend is someone who knows you really well and loves you anyway. And, those kinds of things make me smile. So when I started to think about being your own best friend, I was thinking about that. Because what do we find when we start to dig into why we're not as confident as we could be, why we're not as successful as we could be? We put the obstacles in, and the obstacles come from those core beliefs we were talking about last week, that just pop up subconsciously and you're not even aware of them sometimes. So you have to spend time with yourself and love yourself no matter what. As they say, warts and all. And sing the song "You've Got a Friend in Me," but sing it to yourself. Maybe we should all be singing that in the mirror to remind ourselves that we can be our own best friend, but we have to pay attention to what we tell ourselves. Because if you had a best friend who said, "Oh my God, that color does not look good on you," don't even ask, "Does it make my butt look fat?" Because just assume that it does. You think that you know everything, and you're embarrassing when you speak up. These are the kinds of things we tell ourselves, and it goes beyond the "who do you think you are" kind of syndrome. But if I had a best friend who talked to me that way, it wouldn't be my best friend anymore. And I have to tell you, I do have friends who are critical like that, but I purposefully keep them at arm's length, because they don't serve me as I try to reach out and grow my own influence and grow my own success and grow my own business. I'm a business coach and a personal coach and a communications coach. And if I listened to the people who were always critical of me, I would never be able to do the kinds of things that I do. So I've been listening to the voice in my head quite a bit and saying, you need to be mindful of what you say. You need to remember what you taught Chris. And I taught my son things like there's a difference between what you're doing and who you are. So Neville, you're in education, so I know you've seen parents and some teachers who say something off the hand to a kid, and the one that always drove me nuts was saying, "You're stupid." No, you cannot put that on a kid. You can say what you're doing is not right, or what you're doing might be stupid, but the act is different than the person. And we don't do that for ourselves. We don't separate the act or the criticism from who we are. And in the very basic terms from every philosophy and every religion is you are a light. And as Marianne Williamson often says, who are you to not shine it? And when we grab that, I envision that's why it's good to light a candle when you're meditating, because you're staring at the light and reminding yourself you have that in you. And it's up to you to decide to make the flame bigger or smaller. And that's a great power. Neville, you're shaking your head.
Nodding. It is a great power. I was just thinking of looking in the mirror, which has come up a few times already today. This is about looking in that mirror and being your best friend. You know, tell yourself the truth. Just give yourself some feedback. There's another word we don't like, feedback. Because as soon as I mention feedback in many audiences, everyone thinks of the negative of feedback. They don't think of it as being positive, additive, creative. And I've seen some people who have reprehensibly changed the word feedback into critical feedback or nice feedback, to make it sound as though it's better in some sort of way. But I think this comes back to what we're taught at school. I mean, we are really good at giving ourselves feedback. You know, I'm regularly saying, well, that was pretty stupid. I wish I'd not done it that way. And no one is around me. And I'm just talking to myself. I haven't gone mad, by the way. Because
my mother always said it's okay to talk to yourself. She would only be worried when we got answers.
Well, being an economist, I would always give myself about 7 or 8 answers, and that's just me. So goodness knows what happens when I'm with other economists. But we don't.
The psychologists out there are taking notes.
And psychologists as well. Yeah, I mean, at least the psychologists know they're mad. But anyway, that's another story. But it's this thing about being a friend to somebody. What does it really mean? And I think the best example that I've seen, probably in recent years, was being a governor on a board of school. So I was invited to be a business governor in a school, and I've been governors in a number of schools over the past 15 years, and they use the term critical friend, which I thought was really interesting, because remember, as a governing body, you're outside looking in. So it's a board of governors. So you don't necessarily are involved in the day-to-day, but you're observing things and you're looking at reports and you're seeing the activity without and objectively, and that's the critical friend, really. It's that objectivity that you need to be putting in there rather than subjectivity. And the problem with looking in the mirror, we don't know how to be objective. Now, that's a generalization, but Pareto was right, 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, people are very subjective. And as you said, Jeanne, you know, what you're doing is stupid, objective. You're stupid, subjective.
Yes.
And it's as simple as that. You know, we can dress it up however we like, but the best thing to do is to make it simple, because that's when change happens.
Cameron, you're ready to jump, but you're muted. So before you jump,
don't jump, Cameron. Don't jump.
I have grown up, Neville. I've learned the art. So, there are so many dimensions to friends. I remember in a group of 40, I did a brainstorm and I asked these managers, tell me what a friend is. And then I started to scribble everything they said. And they were such brilliant words. And you can imagine what they would have said. I must have filled that flip chart with, 25 or 30 words. I mean, cooperative, understanding, caring, there when you need them, etc., etc. A friend in need is a friend indeed, kind of stuff. So once that was done, then I asked them to look around the room and point to someone who you think fills this criteria, meets this criteria. And
You little devil.
yeah, and they couldn't identify. I promise you, they could not identify
No.
one person amongst the 40 who they could point to and say, well, that gentleman or lady fits this bill. So I said, if you're not friends to each other, what are you? And spontaneously, one guy said, we're enemies. I said, oh my God, if we're not friends, what are we?
Ouch.
And we are oftentimes unknowingly enemies to our own selves. So this movie title, Sleeping with the Enemy.
Uh-huh.
God, I mean, I wonder how many people are sleeping with the enemy within.
Actually, you've just given a good title for the next movie.
Good.
Right, yeah. And of course, I hope I get some royalty for that.
The
If you said it
visuals
here
are,
first, we're going to make sure of that one, you know.
Thank you.
and the visuals are kind of interesting. You know, you got the bubbles popping up that says, you can't go to sleep yet. We have to kvetch some more.
I had an old boss of mine who was the CFO of our company, and his wife was the CFO of another company. Now that's not normally a problem, apart from when that company is acquiring the other one. And there was a beautiful little article entitled "Pillow Talk," and it had these two CFOs side by side, which was interesting discussion.
That went over
Don't
well.
talk in your sleep, you see. You never know what's going to happen.
Well, it's amazing how negative we can be. And that's why I loved that Apache prayer. And I'll share that on the social media a little later. But when we can look at the beauty around us, look up, look down, look inside, look outside, and start to integrate who we really are and allow ourselves to be. One of the things we were discussing in the earlier show on Tuesday was how a lot of the things that we say to ourselves were probably said to us as we were growing up. And they were often said to keep us out of trouble or to keep us safe. And in the moment, if you could replay it in your mind with your adult visor on versus your child visor, because we hold on to the emotions from being children, and chances are those were relatively I don't want to judge, but kind of negative. You know, you're hurt, you're upset for whatever reason because somebody said don't do this. But as an adult, you can look back and go, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have been doing that. You know, running into the street was not a safe thing to do. Putting your hand on the stove causes, pain. And you start to see how the adults that were bringing you up were trying to guide you to be safe. But we hold on to it over and over. So it becomes a callus. You know, like I have a callus on this finger from writing because I would squeeze my pen so hard, and many, many decades later, it's still there. So that's kind of what happens. It becomes calloused inside of us and we don't release that emotion. And so it just keeps, it's like that snowball, it just keeps bigger, bigger and bigger as it's rolling down. And when we look at it from a different viewpoint and we start to look at it like, I've shared with you guys how my dad would yell, shut up, when all of us kids were going crazy during one of my earlier coaches called the typical Irish dinner, as we were, getting kind of loud and talking over each other. Well, now as an adult, I can look back and go, that was a cacophony of noise that nobody needs to hear. So he was reacting as a human, but I took it more directly because I was in my 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old self. I didn't know any better. My world is much bigger now, so I can interpret it differently. And so there are discussions you can have with yourself as your own best friend that says, let's take a look at this. Let's see what that really was like so we can process it and let it go. Because if you can process it and let it go, then you get to grow. Oh, Carla, I was just getting on it. I was getting ready to go for another 2 minutes and you held up the clock.
I had up the clock before, after the 2 minutes.
I love it because it's like in Toastmasters, you see that green, the yellow, and the red, and then you really push it, when the red comes, because you have to finish the sentence, not the paragraph.
Right. And you do wonderful paragraphs.
Yes, I do.
On, and you're really great at it, Jeanne. Just to let you know, I appreciate it.
I'm burning to come. I want to just quickly add something. Neville spoke about teams and organizations and people in organizations and the relationships they have, and led that conversation lead, to become a friend, ultimately. And to me, a good manager is a good friend. And a good friend sometimes is also a perception. A lot of us think that a good friend is someone who says yes to everything we do and does not in any way challenge what we do. I feel that such people may not necessarily be good for us. Good friends are mirrors to us. And to me, that's the best metaphor, where we can be emotionally naked and are able to trust implicitly and explicitly and feel the most comfortable with another, and not have any fear of sharing something and having these worries of, God, if it's misused or whatever. So best interest at heart is what a friend is. And a good manager, therefore, is a good friend. And if you can't be friendly with your people, you can't ever be a good manager, because you want your colleagues and your team members to be able to trust you, confide in you, and tell you things before the numbers speak for themselves. And I feel that this kind of relationship, even with ourselves, trusting ourselves, is being your own best friend. By being trusting your own abilities, having confidence in your own self. I suppose self-confidence, Neville, Jeanne, Carla, is an example of being your own best friend, self-confidence. And if you don't have confidence in yourself, how can others have confidence in you?
It's very true.
That's very true. Oh, snap. This confidence thing comes up, every time. And just because you look as though you're confident doesn't mean to say that you're confident on the inside. The classic analogy of a swan looking serene on the top of a lake. And if you put the camera underneath, you see the swan's flippers going, 20 to the dozen. And that's okay too, because, that's part of life. But I think a lot of people don't realize that self-confidence is a consequence of doing something. So if you don't feel very confident and you sit on the sofa and do nothing, you're not going to build your confidence up, apart from, I'm getting really good at sitting on the sofa. And to be honest with you, maybe you need someone to tell you that in a comical type of way. You're not very confident, but boy, you're really good at sitting on that sofa. Look how confident you are. You're lounging there. You don't give a damn. You don't care, And when someone comes in, you don't get up and make a cup of tea. And you could make fun of it. Something's just come into my mind. Very touchy subject about personal hygiene. It's one of the biggest problems that any manager has got in a closed team. And this was going back some years. I remember someone came to me and said, "We've all voted, and you've got to tell him." And I said, "I've got to tell him what? He stinks." Okay, fair enough. I'm the boss, so not a problem. So I took my time and I called him into the office to discuss something. And I did the subtle thing about, no, don't sit so close, sit further away, do the simple stuff. And I said, I've got some feedback to give you. All right, there's some good feedback and there's not so good feedback. Do you want me to be honest? And he said, yeah, I've always wanted people to be honest. I said, look, everyone loves working with you. Your work is absolutely fantastic. And he said, well, is that the good news? I said, yeah, that's the good news. He said, what's the not so good news? I said, you stink. And I just left it at that. And he said, really? I didn't know. So sometimes, again, you got to know who that individual is. And I'm not saying I was his best friend in the world, but I did know how he ticked. And again, you can always approach this with being kind on one side and then being kinder on another. So he actually took that as being incredibly kind. And from that day on, he stunk the other way. I mean, the aftershave he was wearing was literally, it was almost like, walking past the ladies' loo where the pungent spray comes out, but it was completely different. So again, be honest with yourself and be honest with someone else, but know the trick of giving that feedback, giving that honesty. It's not easy, but you work on it. It's a habit and you'll get there.
Very quickly, but they were following up from what Neville was talking about, feedback. Not to give feedback is cruel.
Absolutely.
To give feedback is difficult, but not to give it is cruel. And friends will never miss an opportunity to say what needs to be said because they have your best in mind. And I feel that even our own self-evaluation, self-assessment, and self-reflection is necessary. And again, Jeanne, you said something so important, that when one is doing that, it's not doing it to yourself, it's doing it to what you do. And that subtle distinction, the subjective and the objective, as Neville rephrased, I think that is too important. We need to be kind to ourselves, but hard on what we do and work out better behaviors in order to accomplish the kind of goals we need to. And I think that's my takeout from this conversation.
And just adding to that, while we're there, we don't have to practice on anybody else. We can practice on ourselves. So literally 5 minutes at the end of every day, sit in reflection and look at the mirror if you have to. I tend not to look at the mirror these days, it'll crack, but just
okay, Grandpa, you're fine.
See what, thank you very much. See what you're saying to yourself. Look at yourself and saying, how are you giving yourself that feedback? Do you feel, it may be honest, but is that the best way you want to receive feedback? So you can practice on yourself 5 minutes a day. And I can guarantee if you're focused and you're honest, by the end of the week, 5-6 days later, you will be giving yourself fantastic feedback.
Two things that pop in my mind. One is somebody recently told me whenever she hears a negative kind of sound in her head, she repeats 3 positives so that she can add the volume of positive and change that balance. The other is one of the things that I've learned through Toastmasters. I call the patented gentle feedback loop. And that's when we do evaluations for other speakers to try to help them improve. We start out with something that they do really good, something that went really well. Then we talk about maybe you could change this thing. And oftentimes it's how you're using the stage, how you're using gestures, especially now that everybody's on Zoom, vocal variety, things like that you can practice, their skills. And then we end with a stretch goal. When you get into doing this, then you could try this. So we're evaluating to help improve and keeping that as the main theme. And I found that to be very, very useful when I was managing people in the workplace, because as you said, Kamran, your manager needs to be kind of your friend, but I actually take it a little bit in a different way. And I actually told the people that reported to me that I was their coach. And, they needed to tell me if there was an issue so that I could help them get through the issue instead of holding on to it and not telling me till it was too late. So I made it a safe space for them to come and talk to me. And that makes me think, we probably need that 5-10 minutes at the end of the day to have a safe space to talk to ourselves, to let that critical internal, well, it's like the internal critic, to say, okay, I'm going to listen to you, but be gentle. Carla, you're trying to break in, so I'm going to toss it over to you.
I've been trying, and thank you for not making me do this. Being your best friend, I think we're picking up on a lot of things. Jeanne, what you said about starting off positive, we're taught to do that as special ed teachers. We're taught to do that as teachers when you're talking to people who really do education right, Neville. Because when we look at the small things that kids do, we're going to say, no, you didn't do that right. Well, but you know what? You were able to multiply 2 by 2 for the first time without looking at the multiplication chart. You're getting in the right direction. You are able, find the good and then go to the negative. And I've used that throughout my life because it gets the person to listen. Very often when they're used to saying, oh, Neville, I hate that shirt you're wearing, instead of, oh, your glasses. Please, I'm having trouble controlling it today. Your glasses really look nice today, Neville. But it would be nice if you wore some color.
You see, this is blue. It's blue. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Sorry.
But that's the point, we go for the negative and then the positive, but we should turn it around and make it the positive and then say, but let's learn how to do this. Let's learn how to do this a little better. I have a friend who really will blast me when I make mistakes. And I love it because he starts out with, you're so amazing. You do such great work, but you need to learn to shut up. And he's right, But he said the right things first before he said the negative. Cameron, Neville, you're rejecting.
Well, I want to comment before we go to Neville, which is that I don't believe that there is anything negative about guiding someone. I came to learn a few years back that when giving feedback, you want to be either positive, which is appreciating the good that the person is doing, or constructive, because negative is really never the intent behind feedback is that the other person gains and benefits from it. And therefore, you're either giving a positive feedback or you're giving a constructive feedback. And in both situations, it's the behavior you're commenting on and mentioning the fact that, look, when you did this, this is the result it achieved. Now, that result is not doing you any good. If you try to adapt your behavior, the likelihood of a better outcome is also going to be possible. So I feel that the use of the term negative is quite redundant nowadays, and constructive is what we really need to adopt instead, because ultimately the intent is to either reinforce good behavior or to redirect behavior that is causing harm.
That's a good analogy. It's reinforce or redirect.
Yeah,
it's there's nowhere in between. You're either doing a good job, keep going, and maybe you can do this, this, and this, which will always be seen as positive, or you're not doing a good job, and then it's the language you use. So, as you said, Cameron, what you demonstrated there was objectivity. Yeah. The outcome of this project wasn't what we were looking for. That's a very objective statement, because the other person will know, no, it wasn't. But now we've got to delve a little deeper. So what can we do for it to be better? Maybe it's something I've got to do to help you do it as well. So this is, I think the language here is far more important, and the sentiment around the language, because I see so many so-called good talkers use that language, and you can see there's no sincerity in there at all. So this is about being honest as well. If you actually say it, you've got to believe it, and if you don't believe it, my suggestion is don't say it.
And coming back, look, sorry to interject, coming back to your exercise of 5 minutes of reflection, if you take that exercise and combine Jeannie's insight on what she learned, which was the two very important statements while reflecting. What did I do well during the day? And what could I have done better? And I feel that these two things that Jeannie was referring to, and the reflection exercise, will turn me into my own best friend, because I will not be doing anything other than strengthening myself as an individual and achieving better outcomes in life, as opposed to being hard and critical and bitter about what may have happened. So thank you to both, and Carla definitely for her laughter and the fact that she went, gentle, go with the positive and then constructive. Thank you.
I'd just like to do, because people really struggle when they reflect the single person, in other words, me or I. So just expanding or contracting it, just saying, what went well today? What didn't go so well, and what could have been better? And notice you're being objective. You're actually looking over there and saying, well, that didn't go very well, and that didn't go very well. But internally, you're saying, I didn't do well here. I didn't do well there. I can be better over here, because you're only talking to yourself. However important you are, from Jeannie's quote earlier on. But if you struggle with the word I or me, drop it and be objective.
Well, also, there is a first step that a lot of people might not recognize, and that's simply taking a breath, learning to take a breath and step away from whatever the chaos is. I know when I started this journey I've been on, I was working with a hypnotherapist for stress management, and she told me to take 3 deep breaths every time I hit a stop sign or a stoplight. And that changed my pattern to allow deep breathing to become a regular part. And without even being aware of it, it affected my thinking. So when I was cut off on the highway, instead of screaming the expletives that were normal, and I had to be careful because my 3-year-old was in the car, but somebody cut me off and sped on, and I turned and I looked at my son and I said, well, obviously he needs to get somewhere faster than we do. And he started laughing, and that changed how I reacted. And I remember that as being that watershed point where I was like, oh, I don't have to react to everything like, and that pushed me forward on the path. And so taking that 5 minutes, what worked today, what didn't work today, how was I relaxed? How did I show up? Get used to saying I through the more positive sides. I showed up by not getting overstressed. That's a win. That's a win. And
Absolutely.
we need to tally up those wins.
But another reason for doing the reflection is we don't celebrate wins, where our expectation is this is going to happen by 11 o'clock. And even if it happens at 10:30 and it allows you to go make a cup of tea, the cup of tea is a reward for doing it early, but you don't tell yourself that's a great job done. So again, just celebrate the little wins, because there are so few in many people's lives these days that you need to celebrate them all.
Yeah, because don't we celebrate our best friends' wins?
Now everyone has a birthday and we all say happy birthday.
And
How
when
many people
somebody
say happy birthday to themselves?
and when somebody gets a promotion at work, we go out and toast them.
Yep.
You know, it's okay to, you know, it might be a cup of coffee, but let's toast.
So we know how to do it. We just need to do it more often.
I think.
Sorry, Carla.
Can I talk?
Yes.
I don't know. Can you talk?
Talk to you.
Yes, you may.
I have been told all through my life that you always celebrate the other person and you don't celebrate yourself. It's not important. And I think it's time that we switch that and say, yeah, we celebrate me. I'm doing the right thing. There's a lot that I have to offer. And that is changing my thinking and also everything I am doing these days now. Yes, Jeanne.
That's actually an example of those core beliefs that we mentioned. When we can identify a core belief like that and then change it, miracles happen. Miracles happen because everything switches and rolls a different way. It's like there was a movie with a I think it was called Sliding Door. And, you know, it was the story of what would have happened if a woman made a different decision, you know, and I remember it, but I can't tell you why. But, you know, it was a beautiful tale of, oh my God, it's kind of the road less traveled or the road well traveled. You know, you can decide what's best for you. You know, when we make decisions, we open a tree of other decisions. So when you find that core belief, that's actually a win, even though it might be a critical core belief. Like, I remember being told you have to be humble at all times. And I interpret that in the child's eyes as not being perfect. And that becomes, you replace that with perfectionism. But that's a core belief. And what you just said was a core belief that many of us have, yep. Carla.
Right.
Yep.
And with that core belief, we forget that keeps us from moving forward often. We can't move forward unless we believe that we can do it. And I remember when Rehan first came to me and said, Carla, I want you to speak to people in English. I thought he was absolutely crazy and he had lost his head. And I said that to him, are you kidding? How am I going to teach English? And he said, do you speak English? And I said, yeah. And he said, just speak to them in English. And I thought I had nothing to do. I thought I'd do it for 2 weeks and see what happens. And it ended up being a lot of fun. But a lot of that came because Rehan believed I could do it. And not only could I do it, I'd be good at it. And look, now I have MindPlore, I have the English show, I just have Facebook acting crazy. But it all goes from having someone believe in myself who helped me learn to believe in me. Yes, Jeanne.
That is a good plug for why people need coaches. You know, I told you I'm a business and personal coach. My job is to help picture what it is that you want and help kind of lay out the yellow brick road and support. Yeah, I have a coach who's a good friend of mine now because we've been working together for a while, and she calls herself an accountability coach because she says, what are you going to do this week? And we walk away with 3 things that are going to get complete. You know, so she sees that I can complete them. And then she checks up later. Did you do it? And there are times when you don't complete everything, and that's okay. There's this thing called life that keeps popping up. So your priorities might change. But the idea is, and it's a big growing kind of what I call a solopreneur industry, is finding people in your inner circle that can support you and see you where you can be. they don't have those core beliefs that you have. They get to see pretty clearly. It's like the camera, you know, if I took a picture of something in a moment, you know, it captures everything that it sees. And when I look at the picture later, I might see a lot of things that I didn't notice before. You know, the rose bush might be much filled with many more dead roses than I had noticed because I was looking at the one beautiful rose. And that's a good thing. That's how we support each other.
Hey, Kamran.
Did you see me stop before you held that up?
It was
I just wanted us to go back to the Dark Ages and go back to Marcus Aurelius, because I received a quote from a friend and it was very thought-provoking. And I thought it may be a good occasion, now that we are talking about being the best friend to our own selves. The quote is, "How ridiculous and unrealistic is the man who is astonished at anything that happens in life." It's a thought, and I just wanted comments from the three of you, because I was trying to work my head around it. How ridiculous and unrealistic is the man who is astonished at anything that happens in life?
Had he said the child, he'd have been wrong.
Yes.
But because he said the man,
yeah,
it dictates some level of intelligence, some age. And if things start, everything, as he said, not just one thing, but if anything astonishes you, then you better start opening your eyes, because you're not living.
Mm.
But they're very clever. These old philosophers are really clever, I find. If indeed they said these words, as we all know, they didn't speak English. They spoke, Greek, Latin, or, some other form of, maybe Arabic even for some of them. So yeah, but I just wanted to pick up two things when we go into beliefs. And Jeanne, you said if you change your belief, you change what you do. Now, I sort of knew that for many years, but I only read it in a book called "Who Moved My Cheese."
Oh, yeah.
You can go onto YouTube. There's even a video about it. It's not a complete video, but it says enough. And there's this one phrase, very well written book, and it just says, if you change what you believe, you change what you do. And all of these sayings, I like the book because, and I like the video because if you see it on a blackboard written by someone else, you believe it. It's a bit like if you see it written on a computer, you start to believe it. And that's what they did with this. They put it all over this wall, a bit like Banksy, the early version of Banksy. If you change what you believe, you change what you do. So that's one little tip for everybody to read. And the other thing is, going back to this Friends issue, and it wouldn't be me if I weren't going to play a little plug, but if you look at what's said at the bottom here.
And Friends.
And the thing about that is, your friends may be friends because you're connected by a common cause, a common goal. Whatever that common goal is, you might find you got friends all over the world. Look at global warming. How many friends have people got all over the world? Because there's this common belief that we are producing the global warming factor. This is not a natural phenomenon. And you'll get other friends. If you believe it's a natural phenomena, it's just a cycle, it's going to happen, so we can't do anything about it. And there's lots of friends like that out there. So I think it's an important thing to know is, whatever your opinion, there's a friend out there. And the question is, to improve your opinion, get a critical friend. Maybe someone that doesn't agree with your philosophy and is prepared to have a good discussion with you rather than an argument. And at the moment, we see in the global arena, leaders of all these countries There's more arguments than discussion.
Yes, we're in a phase where I liken it to having a room full of 3-year-olds who have just discovered that there is a world outside of themselves, and they're not quite sure how to share, so they fight. And I remember having to discuss with 3-year-olds how to look at something from the other kid's point of view, and how sharing was something good. But we don't have that right now at the highest levels. And learning to listen to each other and is just as important as learning to listen to yourself. You can't change things if we don't listen to ourselves. If we're not aware that, oh my heavens, I have an opinion and this person doesn't agree with me, it's like, what do? We have to relearn how to talk to ourselves and how to talk to each other. And talking, as Carla is well versed in teaching, having a conversation is actually two-way. You have to listen to the whole thing that somebody's saying before you respond, so that you can respond appropriately to what's been said. And if you don't listen, then there's really no conversation. And the same with yourself. If you don't listen to those thoughts in your mind, you're not going to be aware and able to make the changes needed.
There's
Carla?
a wonderful, thank you. There was a wonderful quote that I read either on LinkedIn or Facebook in the past day or two that says, be kind to yourself because you're the person who talks to yourself the most. And I know I'm not as kind to myself as I need to be, but I'm learning to flip that coin. And I think that's the whole problem that we have in the world, that we're afraid to be nice to each other, because if I'm not nice, I need to be nice to Kamran before I'm nice to me. And that means I need to do something that I may not want to do to get his approval. And that's not true. It doesn't matter what Kamran thinks, or Neville, or Jeanne. But what is important is what I am saying to myself. And I've had to say no recently, which is not very easy for me to do.
Wow.
But I am getting good at saying, hey, you cannot have that. I will not do that.
There is a reason, Carla, that flight attendants say before every flight that when the mask comes down, put yours on first before you help your child or your elder, or whoever's there. If you're not getting oxygen, you can't save them. And that's a great directive to carry on. We can't be friends to others if we're not friends to ourselves. And to go back to, I think it was Cameron's story about, how many friends do you have? If we're not friends to ourselves, we're not exuding the ability to have friends to the outside world. And that was an eye-opening experience for me to go through, to think about that. And I want to share it, that how eye-opening it was, because it is life-changing when you start to be kind to yourself and allow yourself to shine just a little. You're going to say something, Carla?
Yeah, and that's the whole point. We do not allow ourselves to shine because we expect things to be a certain way. And it's time that we shine to ourselves, and not only to Kamran, Jeanne. For me, Kamran, Jeanne, and Neville right now. I love them dearly. Please don't get me wrong. And I'm not telling them to ever shut up. But at the same time, when I need to say no, and I had to do that with Neville very recently, it killed me to do it. I have to say no. And I don't need to beat myself up because I said, no, Neville, I won't do that. I can't do that. And I was worried, will he come back to the show? Yeah, will he talk to me again? And here he is.
No, it's someone else. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's Neville too. The
Doppelganger.
yeah.
A transformed Neville.
Yeah, transformed.
But the point is, Neville, I made my point.
Yeah, absolutely. And good friends, don't become enemies overnight because they've just said one thing that the other person didn't like. And I think that's what I find far too often these days, where you think you've got a friend, just like your taxi driver. He thought he had a friend, and then that friend did something, and he realized he ain't no friend of mine. And it happens all too frequently because it's easy to do in this digital world. You can, Facebook are the classic, be my friend. Not, I really like what you're doing. I've got something that I think we can do together. Please be my friend so we can talk. No, it just says be my friend.
Yeah.
No,
And then you can unfriend like that too,
yeah, you're talking about a transactional lifestyle.
Exactly, Jeannie. That's the word. It's become a transaction rather than a feeling. And a feeling is nothing like a transaction.
Yeah, I have told a couple of people to think of me as your grandmother. When they're talking about something, they go, "What?" They're younger. I'm trying to influence them a little bit. I go, "Think of me as your grandmother." That means I'm going to tell you like it is, and I don't care. And they're like, "What?" So, no, that's how you're going to learn. If I tell you like it is, and I tell you in the way that your grandmother did, and I throw in a piece of caramel or butterscotch to sweeten the pot, then you're going to learn something. I know I learned a lot from my grandmother that way. I learned a lot from my mother that way. But we don't have the kind of structures we had back then that provided that. So, in this world of transactions, we need to change that and have relationships with yourself and relationships with your close inner circle that are different, that are more, as you said, emotional, feeling based. There's nothing better than having a friend who can sit on the couch with you and watch an old movie and you don't say a word for 2 hours, but you eat the popcorn together. Yeah.
Very true. Or you call someone up after 40 years and you just slip back into what you were doing 40 years ago.
Yeah. And that's one of the things one of the exercises that I like to use is when you do the reflection, write it on a paper in your journal with your non-dominant hand. The handwriting is going to look really primary. It's not going to be great. That's okay. It's your non-dominant hand. But what comes out is amazing because it's coming from the right side of your brain, not the logical left side. So you can have that kind of a conversation with yourself and be that comfortable.
I'm conscious of time, Carla.
There is reason to be. Thank you. What?
See how I did that in a nice way?
You did it beautiful.
That was beautiful.
You did it so very, very well.
First thing I've done nice all day, right? There you go.
Yeah. It makes up for last week.
Thank you very much, Carla. Okay. Enough of the feedback. I got it. I got the message. Oh, she's off again. Yeah, exactly. We can't mute her because she's got to close the show.
Right, and you can't do it without me. So in order to mute me for a few moments, I want to go around and have everyone say 1-2 sentences at most about what you think of your best friend. And since Kamran just raised his hand, you're first.
Thank you. I would like to leave a thought that listen to your inner voice, try to understand, but do not judge. do not judge. Just try to understand what it is that your inner voice is saying to you.
But it may not even be understanding. It may just be just listen and let it be at that. I mean, I'm kind of disagreeing a little, but I also agree with what you say. Neville.
Well, Kamran did an exercise with 40 people. So part of your reflection is do the same exercise. Write down all those words, phrases that make a good friend. And on a daily basis, tick them off when you've done them that day. And you'll be amazed because now you've challenged yourself. You know what that list is. So you can go out of your way to do certain things on that list. And then when you've done them, this is the conscious behavior. It becomes subconscious. And that's what we want.
Great. Jeanne?
It's useful to simply remember that the future is ahead of us, the past is behind us, but there's a reason we call now present, because it's a gift. And when we remind ourselves that right here, right now is a gift, we can be gentler in how we respond to things and how we respond to our own thoughts.
Beautiful.
I like that. And I guess it's me. I know that in my life, I haven't spent a lot of time being kind to me. I heard it, you're too fat, you're too this, you're too that, and please don't laugh too loud. I mean, I hear my mom saying these things, and my dad's just sitting there. I'm not sure if he's agreeing or not. But I need to take the voices that I hear from my mom out, and she meant it lovingly. But that doesn't mean I need to believe it now. And having said that, and Neville's awareness, giving me awareness that we are really over time, I want to remind you, we will be back on Tuesday with another MindPlore, with another topic, probably kicking off a little of this one because I really like it. But I don't know. My mind's going all over the place. Maybe it'll be about laughter. That may be a good one. In any case, we will be back Tuesday. Jeanne, I know I'm forgetting something. You can open your mouth.
Thank you. Two things. One, you're finding us on the YouTube channel, Gigglefest University. Please like, share, and comment. That helps us with the YouTube algorithm, which will help us reach more people. And Carla has a Patreon page to financially support her programming, and that's Giggle Lady. If you can give $5 or more a month, your name gets put into the pot for a raffle, and Carla gives out a half hour of her time for a one-on-one online. It's a very valuable time with her. She's a great interviewer, and you learn a lot in that time frame. So please consider giving $5 a month or more, and that's at patreon.com, and it's /GiggleLady. Carla?
You did that very well because I hate mentioning that. In any case, we look forward to talking to you on Tuesday. And don't forget the third Global English Conference is coming up this month, Sunday and Monday. And if you come on Sunday, you're going to see these three guys there. And also Esther, I can't pronounce her name, but she's the mom of the CEO of YouTube, and you and me. We have a school here, a principal of a school here who teaches using the Socratic method. And many of you know Rehan Fatima. She will also be there on Sunday. It's going to be a great conference. And with that, can we wave goodbye before these guys begin disappearing on me? Bye, guys.
Bye.